Welcome to Women in the Arena podcast, the podcast celebrating women doing extraordinary things in plain sight. I'm your host, Audra Egan, and our mission is to elevate the value, strength, and resilience each woman brings to the world. Without further delay, let's go ahead and start the show. Welcome in, everyone. Thank you for joining me again this week. This week, my guest is a dynamo. There's no other way to describe her. Her name is Laurel Mintz, and she is a multi-hyphenate woman. With a JD and an MBA from Rutgers University, she could have chosen to do anything, and the doors would have been open to her wherever she looked. But what she chose to do, rather than what would have been the beaten path, is so much more impactful than what everybody expected her to do. Her work has impacted the lives of ambitious entrepreneurs, specifically women, BIPOC, and queer individuals. She is the founder and CEO of Elevate My Brand, and she's here today to share with us her story, her journey, her vision, and her thoughts for all of us for the future. It is both my pleasure and my honor to introduce to you Laurel Mintz. Laurel, thank you so much for joining me today, and welcome to the show.
Audra, thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat.
I am so excited for you to be here. And I want people to know a little bit about your background and how you became this on-purpose entrepreneur, where you actually started out accidentally as an entrepreneur, and what you did with it. So tell us a little bit about how you were brave enough to quit something that you thought you wanted.
Well, to your point, I started completely by accident. So I, as you mentioned, went down the JD MBA route because when you don't know what you're going to do with your life, you try and get all the letters possible, right? The alphabet soup, as they say. And so I went and I did that. I barred in California, even though I hated law school and hated all my law internships. I was like, what else am I supposed to do? Right? It's that what you were saying, like what you're supposed to do with all those things, right?
Exactly.
And practiced for a very short while until my dad got sick, and I ended up having to step down and step in to run his company, which was a huge national furniture chain called Bassett that some of your listeners might know about. And ultimately, that is what truly taught me that I was an entrepreneur, because I never really could look back. I tried. I went after those big law firm jobs when he stepped back in, and I was like, like, that like visceral, like physical nausea that you get when every ounce of your being is telling you that's not your path. That's exactly what happened to me and how Elevate was born.
So you stepped in to your father's role as Bassett Furniture Company. And I think everybody's like, oh yeah, I know that furniture company, because I'm pretty sure we all had childhood furniture from that company.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to note that you recognized right away that you hated law school, hated it, but you completed it anyway and thought, well, I'm supposed to go chase these big corporate jobs. Let me go try that. But the taste of being an entrepreneur by stepping in for your father, it is what made you be brave enough not to look back.
Yeah,
so
I think that's
you're
absolutely
sitting
right.
there. Yeah, you're sitting there going, okay, I should be going and chasing these big law firms, and I could, but I don't want to. That just sounds like it sucks.
Yeah.
So
it was tough for sure.
So what do you do? You're sitting there going, I hate this. I really want to chase this. So what was in your head going, okay, this is who I am. Now what?
Well, I really didn't feel like I had much of a choice, because it was so clear after like the third or fourth bottle of Pepto that I couldn't go down that path anymore, because I was literally making myself sick, because I was like, well, I got all these degrees. I have all this student debt because I'm supposed to be a lawyer. And again, my body was telling me that was not my path. So I started what I call it schmoozing and boozing, which is my favorite thing to do, with other entrepreneurs and just kind of talking and listening more so to what their pain points were. And all of their pain points were around digital. This was, I'm going to date myself now, but this was like 15 or so years ago when digital wasn't top of mind. It certainly wasn't, there weren't experts really in it. I certainly wasn't even an expert in it, but because the MBA that I had was in marketing with a digital focus, or digital bend, I should say, because there wasn't really, again, expertise in that area. I kind of just double clicked into that category and was like, I think I can figure this out. And I cold pitched my first client and she bought it. And we were very successful for her. In fact, she hired me to write a business plan and marketing model for a $5 million fundraise that she did for her first product launch. And I think she paid me like $5,000 for it. Best deal of her life. And after that, I was off to the races.
So you got your first client and you're like, okay, this is what this is like.
Yeah.
But being female and being a budding entrepreneur myself, there's this constant thought in your head, even when you get a successful contract, there's this thought, this weird thought in the back of your mind going, can I really do this? Am I really,
imposter syndrome.
am I really going to be so audacious to continue to chase that? Did you suffer that too, or is this just special to me?
Oh no, I still feel that every single day. Even, now having run my agency for 14 years, but now that we're doing this new thing, Fabric, with the venture fund, which I'd love to share as well, I'm feeling it all over again, right? So I think every time you start something new, you have those feelings. And I personally have done a lot of work, a lot of therapy, a lot of martinis, a lot of work around it. But I also find that it's what drives me to always be better and to really deliver on my promises. I'm always trying to be better, trying to strive to make it so that people don't just feel like, oh, she did it, but she thrived and she really created something that was new, unique, dynamic, and something we couldn't live without. So I think that you call it negative voices, negative self-talk, for me, at least very early days, really was a driver for my success. I don't
So you
wish it on
used it.
anyone.
No, God, no. But you used it as fuel.
Definitely.
So I definitely want to talk in more detail about Fabric VC, but you had mentioned something about your firm that is you offered something special that people can't live without. So without giving away your secret sauce, what is it about your firm that attracted so many individuals and so many companies to you because you had something just a little bit different than what they saw in the rest of the marketplace?
Well, for us, I think it's that we have always been on the pulse of the market. So we are always adding on and evolving and bettering our processes from an operational standpoint, from a creative standpoint. So we ourselves as an agency are always continually evolving. And then the thing that I think makes us the most different, aside from being full service and offering a full digital and experiential suite, which what we see in the market is that there's mostly firms that do one or two things really well, but holistically don't really have the whole package. And early days, that's what firms, especially startups, really wanted, because they didn't want to have to manage 5 teams and cut 5 checks. And it's an expensive undertaking, especially in startup land. So I think having the full suite of services was really unique. And then we've really honed in and perfected our operational process. So we have these digital mind maps that we do on a great platform called Miro that helps us to educate our clients, give them a bit of our secret sauce, develop punch lists very early on for things that they can do to be successful. We have a second model that's very similar that allows us to dig into the creative process. And then after that, we do what we call it our roadmap, where we actually datify all of the different marketing channels. Because what we have found over our 14 years of doing this is that there's a lot of people that think and feel things, and I don't really give a shit. Sorry, pardon my French, but I don't know if I can curse on the podcast, but I don't care about what your feelings
curse
are.
away.
I don't give a shit about your feelings. I want to know what the data tells me. That's not true. I absolutely care about people's feelings. But when it comes to marketing, especially digital channels, I want to know where your baselines are. And most startup brands and even middle market brands can't tell you what that is from an omnichannel perspective. And most of them certainly can't tell you where they exist in the spectrum of their direct and aspirational competitors. So we have this very detailed process that allows us to understand and develop really strong baselines so that our work is incredibly valuable because it's based on metrics, right? We say that we're a center-brained agency, which means we are truly inspired by creative but driven by data. And I think that's what makes a great agency.
That's actually very different
Hmm.
because the two usually don't exist in the same space with each other. And you've
Hmm.
married the best of both worlds. And you said something that was, again, just caught my interest is that you talked about startups. And I know that part of your heart of this business, which is what led you to create Fabric VC, is these young entrepreneurs, these female entrepreneurs, some of these mompreneurs, if you will. How many of those have you helped create from or get from concept to an actual thriving business?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I don't know. So we've also done a ton of pro bono work because I feel very strongly about giving back to my community and that community in particular. But, 14 years, we've worked with over 250 brands to date. Now, a lot of those have been bigger brands, middle market brands, and the large brands like the Metas and the Geicos and the Verizons. But I'd say half of those are probably startup brands as well. So we've had significant impact in the market, I hope, and continue to hope that we
Do you
can.
have do you have any stories that are your favorite that you can share with us?
Oh my gosh, favorite stories. Well, there's a company that we helped launch from start. It wasn't a female run company, but it was a really fun plush category company. They were a wholesale brand and they knew that they wanted to create a brand. They wanted to own a brand, right? They understood this was about 7 or 8 years ago, the value of brand. And they came to us with a concept. The concept was called Squishmallows. Probably people listening in right now know and have seen them in Costco and Target and Walmart, and they're like everywhere. They're pretty ubiquitous. But when they came to us, all they had was a name, and so we were able to create every character, every storyline, their website, their social channels, which now have millions and millions of followers, and launch them into some of the biggest retail channels in the world. We used to see videos of people like fighting over the last character because they had to collect. They were such a collectible item that they would fight over the last one on the shelf in a really kind way, of course. But that was one I was really proud of. And 3 or 4 years rather after we started working with them, they sold to private equity. So it was a big success story.
That is a huge success story because my daughter, who's almost 22, by the way, is obsessed with Squishmallows.
Yeah,
And
they're everywhere.
which she started buying these things. I'm like, what in the world are these things? She's like, Mom, just hug it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, I get it. I totally get it. So you were responsible for putting them on the map.
We had, so in our old office before everyone went remote, we had this really beautiful space. And we had one room that was actually completely dedicated to Squishmallows. It was supposed to be a creative space, but it ended up just being all of the characters. And so one of our team members would go in there probably once a day, at least for a half an hour, and you'd see them on the floor covered in Squishmallows. It was like a little comfy corner, and they'd have their little laptop and they'd just be working, and they'd be like their own little face amongst all these different characters because they have these huge, mass scale ones and then these tiny little baby ones and everything in between and hundreds of characters now. So that was a really fun space and a really fun project.
I can imagine. I can imagine because if anybody knows what a squishmallow is, you understand. Those that do not, go out to your Walmart, Target, even CVS and Walgreens has them now. Go and pick one up and squish it, and
Hmm.
you'll
Yeah.
understand the appeal. And
And they're
I want
machine
to.
washable. And the
Oh my
last thing I'll
gosh,
mention, yeah, the last thing
I
I'll
had no
mention is
idea.
that we found that there was this really interesting niche where children with disabilities or learning issues, or autism, things like that, would really attach to the Squishmallows because of the tactile nature of them, because they were so unique in how they felt, and they felt so connected and tied to them. It was a really special experience as well.
I could see how that would be something that is so appealing to children on the spectrum because they need that sensory stimulation and
Hmm.
that feeling of a hug all the time. That's the best. That is absolutely the best. I had no idea that you were part of that launch, and I, you know what? on behalf of my daughter, we're impressed. but, but that's just an example of what led you, or one of the examples that what led you to start your own venture capital organization called Fabric. And I am so excited to talk to you about Fabric because you are specifically targeting these funds towards this underserved community. And I did an interview not too long ago with two women that started an ice cream company, and they definitely educated me and said that women get less than 2% of all venture capital
Yeah,
funds that are out
it's
there.
pathetic.
And
It's really
and you're
pathetic.
creating
It's
one that
offensive, actually.
it's absolutely offensive,
Hmm.
100%, because there's women are what are driving this entrepreneur spirit right now, because a lot of women have discovered that corporate America isn't necessarily built for them and they want something more. So they're creating something more on their own. But there is lack of funds and lack of access to those funds. So you created Fabric so you can open up access. So tell us a little bit about Fabric.
Yeah, I never thought I would be going down this path, to be totally honest, but it makes complete sense. Very lucky that in on the agency side, we did a lot of work with private equity and venture firms. And one day on one of the calls, one of the venture partners asked me to stay on. And he said, Laurel, why aren't you just launching your own venture firm? And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, look, you are super connected to high net worth community. You have this incredible mission of focusing on diversity, and I've been speaking on that topic globally for since the beginning of my career. You see these companies every day because we get these decks all day long, and because of the marketing side of the business, you can actually make these companies winners. You should really think about going out and raising a fund. And Andrea, I swear, I think I told you this in our pre-call. Like, I felt like I got hit by a bolt of lightning, like, or I took the green pill or the blue pill or whatever one allows you to then see the matrix. Because I was like, holy shit! Like, that's exactly the combination of my entire skill set to date. And not only is it a combination of it, but I've been very mission driven on the agency side, but it's a little microcosm, right? Like we're a small team and we only can support so many companies. Money really talks. And so building a fund would allow us or will allow us to create more equity and more parity at scale, right? From a national and eventually global scale. So I was like, well, shit, now I've got to go do this. I saw the matrix unfold. I saw the zeros and ones. And then I thought to myself, you know what? The truth is, if not me, who? And if not now, when? Who else is going to go out there and be ballsy enough to do this, having no experience or little experience in the space other than connections, community, and a drive?
So for those that aren't as familiar with what venture capital is or does, can
Hmm.
you boil it down to the simplest terms of what is venture capital?
So venture capital is considered an asset class. So you can think about assets as anything, right? Your home is an asset. Investing in the stock market publicly is specific asset class, et cetera. Venture is considered high risk, high reward, and that's because, as you may or may not have seen on our site, we really believe it's broken. So typically, what happens in venture is, just for sake of easy numbers, let's say you have 10 companies. 8 of those companies will fail. One will provide a significant multiple, but not really fantastic. So 3 or 4 times the return. And one will carry the entire fund, be your Google, right? In any other business, that would be a ridiculous way to be successful. But back to and so we're solving for that or de risking for that by folding in the marketing model. But back to the original question of what venture is, it's basically you build you combine a bunch of people's money into what's called a fund, a venture fund, and then you deploy capital or you spend that money in specific categories or theses, right? So a thesis is a category or a group of people that you specifically deploy capital into. So for us at Fabric, we are only deploying capital into queer, BIPOC, and women founders. And we are focusing our efforts in the categories that we know well, which is consumer tech, and then my venture partner, Jahara, who comes from M13. She's really focused on the future of healthcare, future of workspace. But venture is really just money going into companies to help them grow quickly, truly.
And so why has access to these funds, which they're all over the place, but there has been a barrier to this access for the categories of individuals that you mentioned that you happen
Hmm.
to be specializing in?
Hmm.
Why is there that disconnect?
I mean, the very easiest answer to that is that it's a systemic issue, right? Think about who runs private equity, who runs venture capital. It's all of these finance bros in their tech vests that come from all of the Ivies. It's what I call pale, male, and stale. And so they have absolutely zero desire or need for the most part to want to change that because it's not to their benefit. So it's people like me that have to come in and break that shit apart and really scream from the rooftops about how how we need to change this. And the only way to do that is with dollars, honestly.
So I know that there are lots of women and a few brave men that are listening
And
that are listening to this show,
non-binaries, yeah.
and non-binaries and everyone. Um, they're listening and going, I am a budding entrepreneur. I'm not necessarily wanting to be on that scale, but I just want to create a business that can sustain my family. But they are feeling pressured or have that crazy thought in their head that they can't do it. How do they break free from that? Because the reason why I ask you this is because you said it's a systemic problem, which means it goes all the way down, including the solo entrepreneurs that are sitting here thinking, I need to turn my side hustle into my actual hustle. So
Hmm.
how do we change that?
Oh, I mean, that's such a loaded question. I think the best answer to that question would be to surround yourself with community that is supportive and has the skill sets to help you thrive. I think the problem that we see in solopreneurship and side hustlepreneurship is that we do it in a vacuum, right? So we create this little bubble, we stay inside this little bubble, especially with the pandemic. And so that's why we just listen to the voices in our heads. We don't really have a board of advisors or even networking groups like Women Founders Network or Female Founder Collective, 10th House, etc., that has similarly aligned members and people that can help coach you and that do really great work pro bono. So I think it's really a mental game. And the best way to get out of that, other than therapy and martinis, as I'm wont to do, is to surround yourself with other people who are doing the same thing or are a step ahead of you. And I'm sure you've heard this, like, you don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room because then you're in the wrong room. So I always want to be
Yep.
learning and growing and evolving. So find a better room or find a room. I think that that's the biggest gift is the networks that have been built out there to service and to provide support for these specific communities.
And I will tell you personally that this experience of me creating this podcast is probably the greatest thing I've ever done and probably the most terrifying
Mm.
because it was outside of my comfort zone, which is what we're talking about is
Hmm.
these women and solopreneurs and those that are saying I really want to do this. For me, it's stepping out of that comfort zone. Even though you might have created this box for yourself that is uncomfortable, you're comfortable in your discomfort, and
Right.
stepping outside of that is where the magic happens. At least that's been
Absolutely.
my experience. And you
Absolutely.
you did that too. You've had 14 years of magic.
I'm still friggin' doing it. Yesterday, my husband will attest, like I was like almost in tears because have just like been so pushing so hard in a new category that I wake up every now and then and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? You know what I mean? Like, so I think that and people say this all the time, but you're not alone out there, right? Even people who you perceive to be enormously successful and so far ahead of you feel the same feels. So don't let anyone intimidate you. I do a lot of nonprofit work. I sit on the board for Nifty, which is Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship. And they have me talk to a lot of kids, which they probably shouldn't do. No, they should. But when I'm with the kids, I obviously don't curse. But when I'm telling the story to other entrepreneurs, my big takeaway, because they're always like, what's the one thing? What's the one thing? And my one thing is always, don't let anyone intimidate you because everyone's fucking faking it. Everyone.
You know what? I wrote that down when you and I did our pre-interview. I wrote that down that it says everyone's fucking faking it because
Hmm.
life is just a big giant high school. It
Totally.
really is. Even though you physically leave high school, you don't emotionally ever leave high school, and we're all just trying to figure it out and do our best every single day.
Yeah. I still have my nightmares, so I have very vivid dreams. My nightmares are all about high school, FYI.
My dreams and my nightmares are all about all the things that I forgot to do. Because
Mm-hmm.
I have that constant checklist running around in my head, which I'm trying very much to stop. It's a lifelong habit. I'm trying, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to take more martinis and more therapy to get rid of that checklist. But it, I saw a speech that just stopped me in my tracks the other day, and it was, "Don't be afraid of failing, but be terrified of regret." And
I
that has
saw that
stuck with
too.
me.
Yes.
What do
I
you
love it.
think about that?
I thought that was so powerful because you just can't look backwards, right? Like looking backwards is and that is depression, right? They say if you're looking behind you, you're depressed. If you're looking ahead, you're anxious. The challenge is being in the now, and so that quote really just shows you, not to look backwards and to just jump and have faith that the net will appear. Yeah, I don't really have regrets because I just go for it, even when I'm not prepared, which I think is a big differentiator for entrepreneurs. Like we just kind of leap and we figure it out and get it done.
Is that where, let's see if I get it right, Theogid came from? Am I saying that right?
FIO
Theogid?
FIOGID. Figure it out, get it done. Yeah.
You just leap and do it.
Yeah. And I don't get it right every time, just so FYI. Like again, I think there's so many people that go out there and like, look, I had an amazing article posted about me on Forbes yesterday. I also told you that I was almost in tears because I was like, what the fuck am I doing with my life yesterday? So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I think people see and we put up these facades of perfection and it's just so not the reality. And I always want to pull back those layers and make everyone feel like anything is possible because it truly is your own stumbling block. I'm my own stumbling block, but everything is possible with the right community, support, team, and attitude, truly. And
Well, what
martinis
I have,
again.
and martinis.
And
And
martinis.
in our case out here in Arizona, margaritas.
There you
Lots
go.
and
There
lots
you
of
go.
margaritas.
Yeah.
Um, I have adopted this philosophy and this action that I do, is that I'm not afraid of titles. I'm not afraid of your position. I'm not afraid of who you are, because I believe that everyone feels better when they have something to teach. So if I see somebody on social media or in the news or whatever that says something or does something that really speaks to me, and I'm like, I want to hear more about that, I reach out to them.
Hmm.
Have you done that? I imagine that you have. I imagine your entire career you've like, I'm going to reach out to them. They may not know me, but what's the worst they can do? Not talk to me? That's full.
Yeah.
That's fine. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, it's actually one of my husband's favorite traits about me. He just thinks I'm the ballsiest person or the overiest person, I should say. I want to take that back, right? That he's ever met. He's like, you are not afraid in any room. You are not afraid to ask for what you want from any person. We don't have kids and we collect a lot of art and we build relationships with the artists because I reach out and I'm like, hey, I mean, I know that you have millions of followers and you've all these gallery shows and blah blah blah, but like, hey, do you want to come over for a cocktail? And people just like, I think it puts them on off guard in a really positive way because I think we don't realize that they're just people and that they are lonely and looking for connection just as we all are, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I definitely, I'm not intimidated by anyone. I don't give a shit what your title is. I don't care about celebrity. I mean, I grew up in LA, so it was everywhere around me, anyways. But yeah, it's one of my husband's favorite things. He's like, you always ask for the craziest things and you get most of them. I'm like, it's because people don't ask.
No, they don't. They don't ask for what they want. And
Mm,
the worst thing that someone can tell you is no. And maybe
correct.
they'll tell you no in a really colorful way, which is actually kind of funny, because sometimes I'm like, that was a really creative no. I hadn't heard it that
Hmm.
way before.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of times that people say yes.
Yep.
And you're kind of surprised. And you're like, oh my God, they said yes. I think I need to do this again.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
at least that's how
It's
I
just a
feel. When I
muscle.
get,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
You just got to
you get a
start.
yes, you're like, that was fun. Let me see if I can get another one.
Yep, exactly. I mean, and we get yeses on the craziest things. Like, this is super random, but we're about to go on vacation again, so I'll share it because it's top of mind. Like, whenever we check into a hotel, I always tip the front desk person, and I ask them, like, "Hey, I don't know if you're at full occupancy or not, but if there's any upgrades, we would really love it. We're celebrating a honeymoon or an anniversary or whatever it is." And 9 times out of 10, they'll upgrade you to a better room or whatever. Like, it's just incredible where asking can get you. And I found it served me very well.
That's a great trick. I have
Hmm.
I have never I've never thought of that. I never asked for that, but I'm going to use it now.
We did it for my husband's. I think it was his 35th. We were staying at Terranea, and they were like at 50% occupancy. And I just seen it on some travel show, and tipped the front desk girl, and she upgraded us to one of their villas, which was like something insane that we would never pay per night, for the whole weekend. It was amazing. It was insane. Yeah. But again, ask for
The
what you want.
the power of asking a question.
Yeah.
And and your art is beautiful, by the way. I see this gorgeous art that is hanging behind you, and it is stunning. It
Thank
is absolutely
you.
stunning. Was Is that happen to be a young artist that you just saw out of the blue and was like, "I like your work"? I mean, how were you
Yeah,
able to connect with that artist?
this artist behind me is called Trav MSK. He's from this group MSK. They used to be graffiti artists here in LA, actually. They're on a national scale, really. But graffiti has turned into a very they've turned gallery artists, right? So all these young guys that used to be arrested for their work are now super famous for their work. So he's one of the younger in the crew. We've been following him on social for a while, and it was my husband's birthday, and I wanted to get him something special, and so I reached out and I asked for a deal, and he was like, "Well, I'm not going to give you a deal, but what if I come hang them for you and meet your husband and turn it into an experience?" Like, it was really so much better. And sure enough, he came to the house, had drinks with us, he hung the pictures, told us the story about how he created them, and now we have this really great relationship.
The power of asking for what you want from you
Hmm.
and the power of him being an entrepreneur and going
Hmm.
for it and not
Hmm.
being afraid of what happens. And he was had risk of getting arrested. Now, I don't recommend everybody do something that that might get them arrested, but it's just another example of going for what you want and not having to be stuck doing what you think you should.
Yep.
So,
Don't shit all over yourself, I always say.
yeah, don't shit all over yourself. I know that we're running short on time, but I wanted to ask you just a couple more questions. You had mentioned that you sit on many boards, and I know that each one of them is unique and different. What is the most fulfilling one that was unexpected for you? That you thought, I don't know about this, but then you got there and you're like, this is the this is the most unexpected blessing that I've ever had.
I don't know if I've had that experience, if I'm being honest. And I've stepped away from more nonprofit boards because I want to do more public work, and private boards. But I mentioned NFTE, Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship. For
Mhm.
me, it's all about women and kids and diversity, as you all know. And my mom was a teacher, kindergarten teacher, for almost 50 years in LAUSD. So to me, being involved with that organization, uh, I hope no one's listening from it, because I told them I'm not sitting on any more board meetings. I'm not doing any of that bullshit. I just want to talk to the kids and inspire them and empower them. And so they're kind of allowed me to do that. So that's been the most fantastic part for me. Like, I'm not there to like sit on a 4 hour meeting that's doing nothing. I want to make sure that I'm having an impact with the people that these nonprofits actually support. And so that was a true gift for me.
I think teaching kids at a young age that anything is possible, that you don't have to go on this well-worn path that your parents went on and maybe your grandparents went on, that teaching them at a young age to inspire them that they can create anything out of their life is probably the most powerful one of the most powerful things that you can do.
Yeah, I hope so. Hope to be doing good in the world. Making money is great, but there's this point of diminishing return, and I want to have more impact in this world.
Well, I think you're doing it just by dedicating your time and your talents and your efforts to seeing those that are underserved.
Thank
And
you.
you had mentioned in the beginning that there are resources for everybody. And what I would ask of you is I want everybody to sit back and maybe put this on pause and go and run and get a pen and a paper, because I'm going to ask you for some of your favorite resources out there where these solo entrepreneurs can go get access to either knowledge or funds or guidance or just someone to listen to them.
Yeah. So there's so many digital opportunities right now. I really love Hello Alice is a fabulous platform. We do a lot of content with them. They have grant programs. They have educational programs. Verizon also has an entrepreneurial program that they have digital workshops, et cetera, and grants. Women Founders Network, I do sit on the board for that one, so that's caveated. Female Founder Collective, which is now 10th House. Gosh, I mean, there are just so many. There's so many out there, but I'd start with those. The other thing I would mention is like, make sure you're specific within your category. So if you're a consumer, find ones that are consumer focused. If you are technology, Women in Technology International, or something specifically in that category. So find your niche and find your people. So it's almost like a crosshatch of understanding where your community is.
I think that might be a theme for life. Find your people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And people are out there waiting to help you. All you have to do is ask and be brave enough to do it.
Yeah.
So, Laurel, I cannot thank you enough for being here. You have shared so much in the last 30 minutes. I can't believe that the last 30 minutes have flown by so quickly. I want to step back and give you a moment that you can have just a moment of the audience time without me yapping. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, obviously, if you're interested in learning more about the marketing side of the business, elevatemybrand.com is where to find us there. If you're interested in becoming an LP, so that's an investor with us on the Fabric side, fabricvc.com. We're really excited to grow that community and support more businesses. So please find us there. Also follow us at Fabric Venture.
Thank you so much, Laurel, for spending this time with us. I will speak for myself, but you have been so inspiring and given me information that I didn't know before about being an entrepreneur or a budding entrepreneur. And I'm hoping that the audience learned something too, because I know that my audience is full of these young, creative entrepreneurs and even older entrepreneurs that are like, I don't know that I want to work in this box for the rest of my career. I think I want to do something more meaningful. And that the fact that you are here and you chose a path that make your life more meaningful shows that it can be done, that it is possible. So thank you for sharing that story with us. And once again, thank you for your time and being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. And thanks to everyone who tuned in. I hope you learned something.
Thank you so much again. And thank you all for listening. And we'll see you again next time.
This is just the beginning.
That's our show. I am so grateful for each and every one of you and your unwavering support and your continued belief in this movement that has become much bigger than me, much bigger than just a podcast. It has become this forward momentum that we are all doing together. If you are ready, or you know somebody that is ready to tell your story and share your value with the world, please connect with me. You can reach me at audra@womeninthearena.net. I am so honored and thankful that you will share your story with me, and I'll make sure that it is well taken care of. I will never stop thanking each and every one of you, and I cannot wait to talk to you again next week as we share another woman's story and we celebrate her doing extraordinary things in plain sight. We'll see you next time.